Before I introduce you to my next guest today, I want to make sure that you're aware of two new resources to help you to increase your productivity, clarify your purpose, and improve your communication skills. The first one is our Facebook community called Leadership with Purpose. So it's a private community. So go to Facebook groups, search for Leadership with Purpose, and send a request to be invited into the group. There's a few questions for you to answer, and then live to have you a part of that community of other like-minded leaders. Our team is really excited about launching the Next Level Coaching Roadmap. It's a group coaching format, so highly recommend that you check that out and to get your questions answered. If you're a leader that's experiencing any of the following, this is definitely a group format that's going to help you break through to your next level within leadership and your career. So if you have any fear about moving to the next level in your leadership career, this is a group that you'll want to connect with. If you have loss of confidence, if you're kind of confused, like not knowing really how to tap into the hidden job market, if you have a desire to really to grow to the next level, this is definitely a group that you'll want to be able to connect with. If you want to know how to stay calm in a high stress environment, there's going to be strategies, tips, and resources, conversations all around how to develop skills to do just that. So if you want more information, head over to warrenwandling.com/the next level coaching. And in there on that page, you'll notice more information about the coaching roadmap, but also there's a link for you to schedule a phone call with me so we can help really figure out if this is the right fit to helping you take your career to the next level. Okay, again, that's warrenwandling.com/the next level coaching. Welcome back to another episode of How to Become an Obstacle Buster. I'm your host, Warren Wandling, the show that's dedicated helping leaders and entrepreneurs to overcome their obstacles, build resilience, and achieve success. And I have a phenomenal guest to help us do just that, Dr. Susan Harrison. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. The way that you said that, I feel like there needs to be applause.
There should be.
Slay me.
Exactly. I needed to play the applause track.
Yeah, in front of a live studio audience of two.
Exactly.
Wow.
And that's part of your background. I know you've been seen on NBC, CBS in Kansas City. You're currently on the monthly guest on Fox Morning Show. You're a gifted keynote speaker, a coach, an award-winning author. Tell us about your business, Dr. Susan.
Well, what's there to say beyond that? That was so good. Thank you very much. So I have a couple of different avenues. And if you look, anybody listening goes to my website, they'll see that. But, on one side, I love to go and speak for companies, their events, but also go in and train their employees. And when I'm doing that side, it's all about, communication skills. So with communication skills, it's about helping people prevent and lower conflict. It's about their work relationships. It's about their personal relationships. It's about their stress. It's, if I come in, then you're going to have lower turnover. You're going to have employees that get more done because of communication skills. And then the other side is I teach confidence for women. And so I do that with classes and I do that with one-on-one coaching. So I kind of have two different directions that I really focus on.
Wow, that's really interesting. I love, certainly from a communication perspective, right? Because we used to think that was a soft skill, but actually I think is it really a strong leadership skill that you really have to embrace and study to become a better communicator.
Yes. I think that communication is one of those things that everyone has been doing it their whole lives. So they don't really put much thought into how can I get better at communicating. People just don't think like that. They don't think, am I a good enough listener? And the only reason why people might think these things is if someone like me comes in and speaks to them, or if they hear a podcast or something, but they're not usually going to come up with it on their own. And so I think that communication skills is just so basic for everything that we do. But we use it so much, it's often overlooked, but it is just the most important thing that you can have, the most important skill.
Yeah. So what do you think what is the greatest obstacle that your clients encounter then?
Well, really for companies, it's conflict and how you handle that. I've spoken to so many companies for so many companies on this, and I've heard from a lot of employees that'll say things like, "There's a bottleneck. I get all of my stuff done, but we can't go any further unless this next person gets his or her stuff done, and I can't communicate to them the importance of it." But now their relationship is kind of ruined because of communication, and so they just kind of slow the whole thing down. And so conflict really does, and again, it goes back to communication, but conflict really does present as the greatest obstacle because it slows down the whole process of the company.
Yeah, so man, certainly in the last 2 years that we've all experienced, right? Because then now the work model changed. If you're a hybrid, if you're working at home and some in the office, have you seen that an impact in reference to conflict of unset expectations? What are some strategies to overcome kind of the new work environment?
Well, uh, in some places it's helped a little bit because there's not so close quarters with the person that they can't stand. They can instead just keep it on a personal level. And I always like to say, listen, your work doesn't need to be Disneyland. You just need to be working well together. And so if they don't have to, walk by the desk and see someone who looks like that they have a constant frown on their faces, sometimes that can really pull them down. So if they don't have that, it can help a little bit. But as far as strategies, I just recommend that you continue to communicate. And if you're not sure about something, that you go to the source and you ask instead of just kind of assuming. A lot of us become intimidated with communication and we don't want to appear like we're stupid or, some other reason that stems from our own fear. So it's really to go past that and continue to communicate, because if not, that's where things get missed.
Sure. Yeah, I love that in reference to just stepping out and taking that risk to verify what you might have assumed that someone else thought or perceived, yeah, of your
Yeah, and
work.
I'll tell you another thing is that listening is a skill that most of us can constantly be working on to be better. And when you are in that kind of a situation, it's so easy, and you know this from your work experience, it's so easy to try to focus on 10 things at once. And another great thing you can do is just stop, just focus on what this one person is saying right now and put everything else off to the side and really try to up your communication. I know that there's a gentleman right now that I talk to occasionally, and he's so honest about it. He will just stop me and say, "I am sorry, my mind started wandering. Can you start over?" And I appreciate that so much because most people aren't humble enough to admit whenever they're failing in this area. So that's another thing, is just to make sure that you're humble and you are listening and owning up to what you need to do.
Yeah, I love that illustration because you're right. Most people aren't self-aware to say, "Hey, like, you know what? I was really not listening." So, with
Mhm.
working with leaders, do you have a strategy to help them really developing their listening skills so they're not just hearing or waiting um, to interrupt them until they finish, right? But really listening.
One of the things that you will see when you come to see me speak, anyone will see, is that awareness is super important to me. And when you become more aware, you can change everything. So whenever I talk to leaders, that is a huge component. I want you to become aware of how well you listen. And then I give them exercises and things that they can do. For instance, the next time you have a conversation, I want to make sure that you speak 20% and the other person speaks 80%. And your 20% should mostly consist of questions, clarifying questions and questions to get them to talk more instead of you talking about yourself. Focus on that other person. And so, in order to increase your awareness, sometimes you have to do things like that to really pull back. And another thing is that you and I both know that negative self-talk is huge, and a lot of people do this. So it goes back to awareness. You have to pay attention. How are you speaking to yourself? How are you speaking to other people? But, along with the self talk, I'm going to kind of go back and forth here in a second because I want to get back to self talk, but I don't want to forget this. People make everything about themselves, and I'm including myself, right? We communicate the way we want to be communicated to. We listen, but we're mostly thinking about what we're going to say next. All of these things we can really change and make a huge difference if we just start becoming more aware. So, for instance, you and I have both known people that are close talkers, right? Somebody
Mhm.
probably comes to mind right now.
Yeah, right, exactly. I won't share their name, but yes.
Yeah. So that with this person, they come close. Now, if you want to build a rapport with this person, you don't move and you let this person stand as close as possible because it is about that person. And that is another exercise that I have people do, because even though maybe you don't want to keep that forever, it forces you to become more aware. That person who is standing really close to you is not an aware person. They don't really get what they're doing and how it impacts others. So when you cannot move, you become more aware of what you're doing. And can I tell a little story here real quick?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay. Well, this was many years ago, and I got a call from a friend of mine that I hadn't talked to in 5 years or so. And we're chatting away, and he suddenly says, You seem negative. Now, I've always been told I'm the most positive person that anybody knows. Everybody's always like, You're the most positive person, la, la, la. And so immediately I just got defensive. I'm like, No, I'm not. Right. Which is what a negative person says. And so I just said, No, I'm not. And he goes, All right. So we just kept going with our conversation. By the way, years later, I asked him about this conversation. He does not remember it at all. Okay. But I never forgot it because it was huge for me. So that day, I really started thinking to myself, okay, is what he said true? Because I find in my own experience that whenever somebody says something negative to you, that oftentimes, if they say something negative, I just lost my train of thought. I am so sorry. I looked up and saw something, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
oh my gosh, stop it. Okay. If somebody, where was I going? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Now I'm messing up everything.
No, it's great. So you were talking about the story about someone telling
Oh,
you
yes.
negative, which is really hard to believe in the first place, Dr. Susan, but I'm trying to believe the story anyways.
Thank you. I won't look around anymore. I'm just going to look at this screen here. Okay. um, but so he said that I was negative, and after that, I just started really thinking about it. Am I negative? Because in my experience, when somebody says something negative about you and it really impacts you, I mean, it really bothers you and you get super defensive, it's usually true. And in my case, it was true. And I just started thinking, what am I thinking? What do I think? And I just started really paying attention. Now, at the time, I was in a relationship where this person was really negative. And I thought, my positivity is going to rub off. But what happened was the opposite. And so I'd become a person who would be more negative, and I would gossip and I would do these things that really weren't me. And I had to change back. And I said, no, 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 I am getting myself back. And so just becoming aware, really aware of those thoughts that I have, I was able to kind of get them under control. And then eventually I got back to myself, and I haven't been that negative person in quite some time.
Yeah, that's a great story. Thanks for sharing that, Dr. Susan. Certainly from the response so leaders can understand like what's really going on in their head and their thought process, not to be resistant to someone's insight or awareness. Maybe just be curious. Like, how can you, and fill in the blank of being a good listener. S-
Yes. Yes. And when people feel really and truly listened to, you're not making it about yourself, you're making it about them. Those relationships are so solid. even if, let's say, you don't think of this person as one of your best buddies, they may come to you later and say things like, "You're one of my favorite people. You are somebody that really, your opinion matters, and you make me feel important," or things like that. And some of those things I hear frequently, and it's not because I'm this amazing person. It's because, I listen and I really try to focus on those other people. And I think it's a skill that can be learned, and it can be, I don't want to say perfected, but you can get really strong at it. And it's probably one of the best things you can do to improve relationships.
So, what was a key strategy that contributed to your success building your business?
A key strategy in building my business. Well, seeing what people need, seeing what I have that people need. For instance, whenever I would travel around and I would be speaking to all of these groups, these companies, and I would get to talk to these employees, I would be able to hear all of their stories about what's going on. And then I would take what they said. So I guess listening, right? I would take what they said and I would think about how have I overcome those? How have I seen others overcome those? What am I reading that or have read that's telling me how to overcome those? So really trying to get a good understanding, a good handle on what people are really going through, and not just on a surface level, but kind of going in a little deeper to see what is the real thing. It's almost like whenever you have a negative customer, a customer complaining comes up, let's say at a grocery store or something, and they start complaining about something, instead of the person at customer service just listening to what they're saying, it's like you can get the bigger message. Are they not feeling heard? And I use a grocery store, for instance, because I actually needed to get out of my house, and I went and I worked at a grocery store that's really close to my house for COVID. And I'm like, I got to get out of here. I get on today. I get on today. So grocery stores are really you could go to work at. And I worked at customer service, but I would observe people at customer service or management handling different issues, and I would be like, oh, if you only listen to what that person really needs. I didn't feel like I had the clout to say much at that point. But it's not just in that industry. I've seen it in all industries that I've taught for. And so I think that's probably been my key for the success that I've had.
Yeah, excellent. So, getting back to negative self talk, why do you think it's so important for leaders to know how to identify and end negative self talk?
It's important because they're going to get their employees, their coworkers, their family, to take them more seriously, to listen to more to what they have to say, because negative self-talk affects you in so many ways that you don't even think about. And then not only that, but if you ever want to get to that next level, that negative self talk needs to come under control. So if you are a leader that you don't want to just stay where you are, but you want to keep going forward, you need to really become aware and get rid of that negative self talk. And can I teach a little thing that I do to help people end that?
Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Okay, great. So I invented this thing. I named it, I didn't invent it, but I named it. I came up with it, and it's called Stop It. And I'll have to tell you in a second how I looked that up one day. But okay, so here's how it goes. A negative thought comes in your head, such as "I can't do this." And you say, "Stop it," but you actually put a hand out. So it's got to be something physical and then verbal. There is something psychological. And it's that if you use something physical and you use the verbal, and those two things combined, it can make a big difference. And so some thoughts are so pervasive that you have to do "Stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it," and do this often until you can kind of learn. And I train myself by starting with that. And then now I still occasionally will have, a negative thought pop up about me or even about someone else. And so then now all I do is I kind of just do a little "Stop it," like that, just kind
Yeah.
of get on to myself, "Stop it. Like, you're being ridiculous." And it is just, it's changed my life. And I have taught this technique, and it's so simple. I've taught this technique to so many people, but it has changed lives because it shows you that you can get a hold of these thoughts. And also, you'll notice that I don't do what most people do, and that is say, replace it with something positive. I don't do that. And the reason why I don't is because I want you to deal with it. I want you to deal with this thing. And if it keeps coming up, you may know, okay, have I really worked through that? And you may need to work through it. Most of the time, what I see are things people have worked through, but it's still coming up. So then you can say, stop it and get rid of it. But it takes a little bit of focus and a little bit of a habit. But once you do, it can really get rid of that, most of that negative self-talk.
I love that strategy. And I love that. That's interesting. The connection with the body mind connection with,
Mm-hmm.
I guess you raising your hand, and because you're physically making that connection. And then and you're saying it out loud. I assume that's instead of just to yourself. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, that's right. And it's crazy because it is so simple, and a lot of people think, oh, that's not going to work.
Yeah,
It
right.
works. It works. But the funny thing is that I had been teaching this a couple of years, and I just decided, I never did look that up to see if somebody else is teaching that. And so I looked it up, and I found, and if you look it up now, you'll find, oh my gosh, what is that comedian's name? But a famous comedian, and you would know him. He has this little video called Stop It. And it is kind of similar. This woman, and whenever I start to say it, you might even know it, but this woman walks into his office, and he's a psychiatrist. And she says, okay, I'd like to hire you. And he does this whole bit. I can't do the whole thing right now, obviously. But he says, well, what's the problem? And she says, I'm really afraid of being buried in a box. Sorry about that. I'm really afraid of being buried in a box. And he's like, okay, are you ready for what you need to do? And I know you already know the answer. And she said, sure, sure, sure. And he goes, okay, stop it. Stop being afraid of being buried in a box. And he goes, have you been buried in a box? She goes, no. Do you anticipate somebody's about to bury you in a box? And she's like, no. He goes, all right, then stop it. Stop thinking about being buried in a box. And I just thought that
That's
was so
hilarious.
hilarious, isn't it? And I'm like, but that's so true. I mean, there's so many times when we do things, and it's just like, will you stop it already? Just stop it. So,
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
right. And certainly with the mind body connection, I mean, I'm sure it definitely does work, but I can hear people already on the podcast saying, just as you did, Dr. Susan,
Mhm.
like, okay, does that really work? Because that seems like so
Mhm.
simple, but they
Mhm.
should at least try it for 30 days. Is that like, can we just give them a 30-day challenge?
Yes, that is great. If they can just do it for 30 days, it's going to change their lives. It really will. It completely changed me. It helped me so much, and then it also, made me aware of thought patterns I had about other people, and how fast I judged other people whenever I didn't even think that I was doing that. And it's just so helpful on so many levels, and it really improves relationships, and it just everything about your life improves whenever you can get control of those things.
So I'm curious, what are some keys in helping leaders become confident? I know you do a lot of work around with women specifically, but what are some of those strategies that you can translate for men and women in reference to helping them really become confident?
Yes, because I've had men approach me, and I tell them, listen, a lot of the things that I teach for women are for men too, but I think that I've just seen more women struggle with it, so that's why I focus there. But men definitely need that as well. And there is a difference between confidence and arrogance.
Hmm.
Arrogance is saying, hey, I know everything, or I know a lot, and I know more than you, kind of thing, and I'm better than. And confidence is, hey, I'm good enough, and I'm going to keep learning, right? But I'm good enough. And I'm good enough to walk into this room full of people. I'm good enough to talk to that person. I'm good enough, and even if that other person doesn't see you as good enough. And so it is seen, that you are good enough. And There are some things that I have people do. One big thing is comfort zone, and I teach people to get out of their comfort zones every day. And if you're not entirely confident, one of the reasons is that you're afraid of looking stupid or something negative in front of other people. And so what you do is you start getting out of your comfort zone and you start feeling that, okay, it's really not that bad. And then you start realizing, okay, not everybody has to like me, and I'm okay if not everybody likes me. And so getting out of your comfort zone it just looks different for different people. I remember I coached one woman who she just really didn't like to leave her house. And so I coached her to leave her house, and that was getting out of her comfort zone. But then you go to the other end, and I coached a woman to run a marathon, and she just was not comfortable in her ability to be able to do that. And so I coached her to do that. And just by little things, getting out of your comfort zone. And it can be simple, such as you go and you ask, back to the grocery store, you go and you ask them where an item is. You would not believe how many people would never do that because of their lack of confidence. And so getting out of their comfort zone is just, yeah, that's something huge that I teach. Being aware of your mindset, and it goes back to that negative self-talk. So you have to make sure that whenever you start, I can't do this, oh my gosh, what will they think of me, da da da, just go for it. I mean, everyone has looked not great in front of other people before, and it's really okay. It's really okay. I know one time I was speaking in front of a group of about 60 people, and I fell, or wasn't speaking, but there's a longer story. But anyway, I fell in front of this group of 60 people, and the old Susan would have been completely mortified, and I would still be completely mortified that I did that. But instead, I just, I'm not. And in fact, I wasn't embarrassed then. I didn't even turn red. I jumped up, I put my hands up in the air like, yes. And they all applauded, and I left with a great story.
Exactly. Wow. Exactly. Because you exactly your self-talk was strong too. So
Yeah.
that is a great story. And it shows that you can survive, and there's life after falling in front of 60 people.
Yes, there is life in front of that. That's so funny. And then the other big key thing for leaders that I teach is that when it comes to confidence, you've got to look at your body language, and you've got to hold your chin up. It's got to be even. And I actually just now I did it, even though you can't see me, but I used to walk into stores and things with my head down, and I started this push my chin up with my hand and just kind of make it even out to the world. You don't have to go high, just even. And now I'll demonstrate that, and I have people come up to me later and they're like, I did the chin thing, I put my chin up. Because you start doing these body language things you don't even realize. So when you are walking in someplace, make sure your shoulders are back, make sure you have a good stride, a purposeful stride, you got a little smile on your face. I mean, you've got good eye contact. You kind of think, what would a confident person do? How would they walk? And that's what you do. You embody that. It's the same way if you want to lose weight, look and see what people who lost weight, what did they eat? Thin people, what do they eat? Successful people, what are they reading? You look at what other people do. So with confidence, it's the same kind of thing. And I have this. Here's another quick little story that I just made a note about. That's the little murmur you heard. I attended some sort of a conference, and I come out and I'm just like, all right, I'm gonna do my confident walk. And sometimes I just remind myself, okay, I'm confident. I'm gonna walk confidently. And so I'm walking out to my car, and I'm walking confidently, and it's all purposeful. And I almost always just do it as a habit, as always. But for some reason I really thought about it. And this lady pulls up next to me, literally pulls up next to me, rolls down her window, and she says, you have a very confident walk. And I'm like, wow, I've actually never gotten that before. But thank you. And I don't think I told her, but I teach people how to do that. because part of the battle of being confident is looking confident, and that helps you to feel confident.
Yeah, I love those strategies. Thanks for sharing that for our listeners to help
Mm-hmm.
develop some skills around being confident. We talked about a little bit on communication and specifically around listening, but in your opinion, what is another key ingredient to great communication?
Yeah, so we were talking about listening, and I'll just go back for a second. One of the things that Stephen Covey talks about in his 7 habits is listen to understand, as so instead of being understood, and so really trying to understand those people. And I just want to make sure that I got that in there because so many people are familiar with him, and that is one of the things we kind of touched on earlier. Another really good communication skill is to speak in a manner where you can easily be understood. And we all have a tendency, or most of us have that tendency, and I did it earlier to you where I'm like, what was I saying? Because I looked around and I got distracted, right? So that does
Right.
happen. That does happen, and that's okay. But for the most part, do people understand what you're saying? And how do people respond to you? One another quick story here. I had a woman who was in one of my seminars, and it ended up to be a really small one, the smallest one I've ever taught, and it was 5 people, including, no, I think it was 6, including me. Anyway, she was telling us about a meeting she had with her boss, and when she met with this guy, first of all, it was hard to get an appointment, but when she finally got in there to talk to him, he sat across from her, and basically while she talked, he was on his phone. And then in a few, or texting, and then in a few minutes, somebody walks in and says, "Hey, Dave, you want to go eat?" And he goes, "Sure." And he ended the meeting just like that. And they hadn't even finished. Well, at the time, we were all thinking, "Oh my gosh, that's so rude." Well, it was rude. But I thought about this, and it was a while later, it really hit me. This woman was kind of a circle talker, and she took a while to get to her point, and then whenever she did, she would almost get there, and then she'd back up and kind of restate some things, then she'd go forward, and she wasn't aware that she did that, but that's why he responded to her that way. And recently I've been dealing with this gentleman who is a super nice guy, but he really doesn't understand that when he communicates, it sounds like he is condescending. So he will talk slowly, which is fine, but he will say something and then he'll say, "Do you understand?" Like that. And then, and I've gotten
Oh
used to
yeah.
him, and he doesn't understand how he's coming across. Or, he doesn't understand. He said to me, and I just kind of laughed about this, but it's a good story. I came in carrying a bunch of things to a meeting, and he said, "Just like a woman bringing everything she owns." And he was joking, and I know who he is, and I know that he doesn't mean anything bad by it, but he doesn't understand how some people could take something like that, wrong.
All
So,
right.
yeah, it pay attention to what you say and how you say it.
Yeah, that's so important, right? Just being self-aware again, there's that word, but being a
Yeah.
self-aware leader of
Yeah.
how your message is coming across, the tonality, and how is it landing with the person that's the most important on the other side of that conversation.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Exactly.
if leadership is influence, what's one of the top strategies that you share with your clients to increase their results?
Develop those personal relationships with the people that you lead. And it doesn't mean to be need to be super personal, like let's go to the movies, but it is where you get them, you understand, you've paid attention to their personality style, you've paid attention to likes and dislikes and things like that, and you see them as people. I remember there was a gentleman whenever I don't know if I was 20 or 21, I was working at Applebee's, and I was a corporate trainer for them, traveled around the country and opened up Applebee's. But when you weren't training, you had to work in the restaurant. And I remember I was working, and a gentleman came in, and we trained managers at the store. And so I just trained him on how to, what we call expedite. And that's when you pull the plates out and you kind of make sure they're in order and they have everything on them, like sauces and things. and then send them out. And so I was training him on that. And the whole time I'm joking around with him, and I don't know who he is. And so I just thought he was a manager, and people start coming into the back and start shaking his hand. And I said, okay, who are you? Well, I'm the new CEO. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And his name's Lloyd Hill. And he just changed everything. I mean, for me, as far as the outlook of how you really treat people when you are, he was my first CEO I'd ever met of a big company. And it was really interesting because he would come into stores and he would talk to the dishwasher, which a lot of people would come and ignore the dishwasher, or he would talk to the servers, the cooks, whomever. I mean, I don't know if he always remembered names. And I think it's extra good if you can remember names. Not everyone can do it. I have a couple of tips for that. But even if you can't, it's looking people in the eye and it's recognizing them and their importance, even if it's what is a small thing in the whole thing system. We need them, we need everybody, and so don't look down on that. And so that's huge. And I have volunteered at events where, nobody knows me. I mean, I'm not famous anyway, but nobody knows me from Adam. And I remember this one famous man came into this event that we were having, and he was some kind of a sports guy. He was just like a sports announcer, and I can't remember his name, but I remember he was short. And he I was one of the people that was serving, and he treated all of us like we were nothing, like we didn't matter at all. He didn't say thank you, and he just was condescending and looked down on us. And it's like, yeah, he's no Lloyd Hill. Yet he's very successful. But I guarantee you, he would have less stress in his life. He would get more done. People would do more things for him if he just cared about those people as individuals and really showed that he saw their importance.
Yeah, that is such a key aspect, right? I have so many times leaders will say, yeah, I don't have time to spend getting to know my people, right? I have so much work or other meetings to attend. But that strategy that you just shared creates, like you had mentioned, creates leverage.
Oh my gosh, that is a great way to put it. Create leverage. And then let's talk to those people that have those really large companies. And honestly, they have 50,000 employees. They can't develop a relationship with everyone. So I understand that. But still, when you are passing them and you are walking by employees, saying hello, they know who you are, saying hello, maybe stopping and just asking a couple of people here and there, how's your day? If I am, let's say, in manufacturing, and I am three stalls down from somebody that just got asked by the president how they're doing, I feel like it's happened to me almost. It's just really, it shows that our work is valued. And so you can do that by that, the manage by walking around isn't such a thing anymore like it was, but you can still get out there and you can still talk to people and let them see that that they matter. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that.
So I believe that success leaves clues. One of those clues are the books and authors that successful people read. So are there any books or authors that you have really impacted you in your career?
Yeah, whenever I first started out, I these three authors I'm about to share with you just changed everything for me. I had not read leadership books before. I didn't really have a great concept of everything they're teaching. I was still learning. And again, I hate to sound so dramatic. Oh, everything changed my life. But I've had so many, so many things that have changed my life. And I hope that continues to be my experience in life, because I have so much to learn and I want to continue to learn. But Stephen Covey, Tony Alessandra, and Brian Tracy,
Oh, wow. Yes.
those three were just core for me and taught me so much about leadership. And Zig Ziglar, oh my gosh, loved him. He taught a lot about relationships, but so I guess I should definitely include him. But I would say these gentlemen really really made it clear and easy to understand. Now, Covey's book, The 7 Habits, it's kind of, hard to get through, but the habits themselves, and then it's kind of a skim book sometimes, but the habits were so easy to really understand what that meant, and just change some of the things that I was doing. And so yeah, I love those authors.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So what does the
Yeah.
future hold? Any special projects that you're working on, Dr. Susan?
Yeah, well, I'm about ready to start up another round of In Confidence workshops for women. I'm going to start those up in May. And as far as other special projects, I am just always looking for more speaking that I can do and training. And so I'm always looking for companies that I can go into and I can talk to them about communication and make some real differences in their organization. So I wouldn't say that's really a special project, but that is definitely one of the big things I'm always doing.
Well, excellent. So if our listeners, I know they want to be able to connect with you. What's the best way for them to be able to reach out?
Well, an easy thing to remember is drsusanharrison.com. And so that is my website, and there's a contact on there. But if you want to email me, it's Susan at drsusanharrison.com. And those are two great ways.
Okay, perfect. I'll make sure both of those links are in the show notes.
Wonderful. Well, I really appreciate your thoughtful questions and the things that you wanted to know and your follow-ups. And I appreciate that because I'm so passionate about all of this. And I really do want to see people get to that next level. And so it's been wonderful to be able to talk about that passion in my heart for this.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your strategies, tips, and resources that you've shared, helping our listeners to overcome those obstacles and build resilience to achieve success.
Thank you. Well, you are welcome. I appreciate it.
Well, until next time, this is your host, Warren Wandling, saying, be an obstacle buster.